All right. So my name is Dennis Sadberry. Also in the meeting is David Berthoff and John Prize. Unfortunately, David Garrett and Pamela Payne could not attend. They both work the swing shift, and so they could not get away. So it will just be the three of us and yourself. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Why is it not, okay, here we go. So here's the agenda: project description, team members, kind of our roles and responsibilities, requirements overview, design overview. I'll include the ERD and the data flow diagram, although I have all of the documentation open if we need to go further into any of it. I have the construction overview, the test results, deployment plan, problems, lesson learned, and the application demonstration. Actually, we'll go ahead and do the application demonstration first, and then we'll finish off with problems, lessons learned, and then the conclusion. Williams Specialty Company is a small printing and engraving organization. Really, it's just when the customer requests a printing and engraving, they go through the standard order process. And so the system allows for standard modification, storage, retrieval from several subsystems. So at its core, it is an end-to-end order management system, and that's really all it is. So we want to make sure we didn't get beyond the scope of that. It is an order management system. And that does a lot of database manipulation. Additional functionality would include user and customer administration and some other smaller items, but at its core, end-to-end order management. And the team members, so this is Dennis Sadberry speaking. So I was the team leader, worked as a project designer, a documentarian, QA tester. So as a team leader, I did the facilitate the meetings, did a lot of the documentation, and also managed the documentation. Um, Worked with others to provide documentation, upload the documentations, and so forth. I was attended all of the meetings and worked in collaboration with everyone else as well. David Berthoff, project designer, graphic designer, and documentarian. I say project designer because David was the one who built this Williams Specialty Company logo. I think it's really cool. I like it a lot, so I like to brag about it. So that's why I call him the graphic designer, also documentarian. He was engaged as well along the whole process with early on in the design and then through um, troubleshooting and working with others. Pamela Payne, again, unfortunately could not be here, project designer and documentarian. John Prize, also project designer, developer, documentarian, and QA tester. So he and I primarily did the QA testing. He wrote the QA document that we can look at later, and it's really a nice document. Did a good job on that. He helped out quite a bit with the development as well, so it was very good to have him on the team. And then last but not least was David Garrett, and it's too bad he can't make it because he was absolutely key to the success of this project. He was a project designer, lead developer, database administrator, documentarian, and the MVP, the most valuable player. So with that being said, I'll kind of speak to this a little bit toward the end um, about that. Really, none of us are working developers at all, so we were at a kind of a bit of a disadvantage. But we said we're not going to be like that, that cat who wanted to fish but was afraid to get his paws wet. So we went ahead, took that tiger by the tail, we just bit the bullet and we just jumped in with both feet. We just did it. We just got it done. So I'm pretty proud of our team. All right, requirements overview. By the way, feel free to jump in and stop me if you have any questions or any comments, guys. Requirements overview, system overview. We needed to create an application, again, that creates, modifies, stores, retrieves, customers, orders, and inventory. We had a quality assurance checkpoints, and then, of course, user and customer administration. The methodology that we actually used a a couple of different methodologies. In combination, we use the rapid application development, and so that has that's less emphasis on planning tasks and more on prototyping and development. So again, at the beginning of the project, this is 8 weeks. It's a condensed project. We simply did not have the time or the luxury to go with the traditional lay everything out first before we ever do a line of code. We needed to go ahead and move along and begin prototyping and developing and documenting as we went, and then going through a cyclical process of correcting our mistakes, fixing issues, etc. So Agile goes right along with that, and the beautiful thing with Agile is that the requirements and solutions evolve through collaboration and self-organizing cross-functional teams. So that's exactly what we were. We were absolutely a self-organizing cross-functional team. So David Garrett, he was absolutely the primary DBA. However, we all contributed to the design of the database. We all contributed to the code and the overall scope, etc. And we were all documentarians, etc. So we all worked across functions, and we would do ad hoc meetings. We wouldn't necessarily have a person doing one thing specifically. We would move it around and mix it up and kept it fluid. Requirements are pretty straightforward. This is a straightforward system. It is not a simple system to build, but conceptually it is simple to understand. And we wanted to make sure that it remained simple to understand and simple to use. So the requirements are, we just wanted to build a system hierarchy, which in this case is just a 2-tier architecture. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we also have the MS SQL database, and then the Windows Forms interface. And that is essentially the requirements on this application. Okay, moving on. The scope is for internal employee use only, and so that is key to our design. Early on, we toyed around with the idea of building a website, and even looking at externally facing websites, but we quickly realized that is beyond the scope, number one, of this project. It brings in extra difficulty in the coding, and extra complications that are unnecessary because it's an employee-only system. And we also wanted to keep it simple, straightforward for the customer to use. I'm sorry, for the user, our user, which would be our employees. So it didn't need to be real pretty or fancy. It needed to be functional. And so we built it to be functional. We also built it, I'll speak to this again a little bit as well, but we did build it with a role-based, kind of context-sensitive interface. So we kind of embraced the concept of security by obscurity. We felt like that if a user does not need to see data, does not need to manipulate data, he should not have access to that data. The only persons who should have access to data are persons who should be manipulating that data. With that in mind, we built these forms so that role-based forms that are context sensitive. So when you log in as a certain user, your view will be different than others' views. So that was by design. It also makes it easier for the user because there isn't as many options that they might get in trouble choosing, and it's pretty straightforward for the user. The main roles are the operations manager, and the operations manager performs user administration, order validation, order assignment, QA, customer communications. The salesperson creates and accesses customer information, creates customer orders, and closes orders. Printing, engraving, the guy who actually does the work, but the physical work that he does is outside of the scope of this. So we don't track, for example, his 3D printer internet connection or the materials needed to do it for his silk screening production. That's beyond the scope of this application. And then finally, we have the stockroom operator. who does the increments and increments, decrements, orders parts, and marks orders as delivered. All right. So this is just a quick view of the ERD, just to give you an idea that we did build a solid ERD. I have that in other documentation as well if you wanted to deep dive into that. And then we have the data flow diagram as well, and I have that in a Visio document. We can go through it as well. All right, construction overview. So relatively straightforward. This is a two-tier application and database. The database is SQL 2013, and the database actually is going to. We thought about building, finding the specs for a physical server that we would house at our facility, and we realized that that's not actually in a real world scenario. A small company in today's market would more than likely go ahead and outsource their database application hosting to a third party. We chose Amazon Web Services. They have a very robust relational database service specifically for relational databases, and so that's perfect for what we're looking for. And that way, we don't have to worry about an IT department or the facilities to have a data center, any of those kinds of things. The application code is in C#, and the applications reside on the employees' PCs. So it's, again, kind of a simple, straightforward design. I say simple again. The actual coding of this thing was not simple, again, especially for our skill set that we had. But what we ended up with is a simple interface, I feel like. So you look at the application layer. The primary elements are the login, ops manager, production, sales, shipping, customer administration, user administration, and then you see your key database components as well. Testing. We did unit testing for logic and program errors, and we did integration testing for component and subcomponent functionality. Testing was manually performed. In other words, we couldn't like load test data. The nature of this application, we really needed to walk through it as a user. This is a user application. So I can go ahead at this point and just kind of show you quickly our test results. This is one of the documents that John built. So here you can see we have our application unit testing. And this is the one that again tests for logic errors in the application that would cause it to crash, etc. And you can see that we have a pretty extensive suite of tests that we have ran through just on the application unit tests. In addition, we move over to integration tests, meaning the functional testing. And again, this is for the operations manager. We have a whole suite of testing for the operations manager. As you can see, again, pretty extensive. And then the same for integration testing for the salesperson, for the printing engraving, and for the stock clerk. All right. And then on to deployment. The database was a database system is going to be on Amazon Web Services with a relational database service that Amazon Web Services provides. So it's fully extensible. It is on demand, a capacity increase. It's high availability. It's everything you want in a database service, especially for a database that isn't massive in scope where you might want to have it in-house. The application itself is going to be installed on the user's Windows, there are Windows systems which are all 2007 R2 with 4 gigs of RAM, standard desktop computers. Connectivity is done through client computer, and they connect the Client computers connect to the database via an API to the Amazon Web Services relational database service. Training document is provided, and the application is role-based. I will show you again quickly the training manual just to give you an idea. And here's that logo again. So here's the user manual, and you can see we walk through the process of all the way into how to enter the system, the salesperson homepage, create new orders, sales edits, operation manager, shipping, production, etc. So we just walk through the process. So if you're an employee and you're a salesperson, then all you need to worry about is the salesperson homepage. You don't need to worry about the entire system. Okay, well, let's go ahead and run up a application demonstration. So again, to set the stage here, this is an order entry system, and what we're going to do is take an order from an end-to-end order entry from the cradle to the grave. We're going to create the order. We're going to create users. We're going to create customers, and create orders, and then walk the order through the application. That's going to be the nature of this demonstration. So the first thing we're going to do is log in as the operations manager, since he's the one who can create users. All right, so there's a new order in the queue. So let's see. So it's what's in the closed orders. Okay, so you can see here's the interface for the operations manager. Simple, pretty clean. And he probably has the busiest screen because he has the most things to do. But at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to create a user. Not a customer, but a user, because the operations manager does not create customers. The salesperson creates customers. The operations manager can create and edit users, including delete. So I'm going to create a user, and I'm going to call him Sam Sales. Make it easy to remember. And his username is going to be S Sales, and his email will be sales@wsc.com. His initial password is hard-coded as a NIT123 exclamation point. As a new user, that's the default password. You will need to change it upon login. All right. So now we're going to say we're going to change his role to salesperson, and we're going to create the user. User has now been added to the database. So now I can go back over here to the login, minimize this guy. And I'm going to log in as Sam Sales. S Sales. 3, bang. I'm going to log in. It says you must change a password. So I'm going to put in a NIT123, bang, and change it to 456, bang. Bang. Save new password. Password was successfully changed. So now I'm going to go back and log back in. I'm going to log in. Okay, now here we are in the, right now there's currently no open orders. We have these refresh screens here that refresh. So currently no open orders. We're going to go ahead and before we create an order, we want to go ahead and create a customer, sorry. So we'll click on the create customer, and we're going to call customer Kathy customer, and 1, 2, 3, street. You can see we have these masked here to requires um, requires a numeric field and it's masked accordingly. By the way, if I try to create an email that's an invalid email, please enter a valid email address. So we've got that tested for. We have all these being tested for. All fields are required. So I will say it's C customer at email.com. Create customer. Customer out of the database. All right. Now we're ready to create an order with our new customer. We go ahead and do the drop down for C customer. That's our new customer we just created. And the customer can choose either go ahead and pay now or do a cash on delivery. If we say a bill, and we're going to choose a t-shirt, and so it shows we have 12 on stock for a price of $10 each. So let's say we want 5. It goes ahead and fills out that we now owe, that Kathy customer now owes $50. If I choose cash on delivery, they paid the deposit of $5 and we have $45 due. The text is required, so I'm going to put this is still a t-shirt, and we're going to create the order. Order successfully added to the database, message sent to the operations manager. That's the next step next step in the process. If you notice our Visio diagram, you create the order, and then once the order is created, it goes to the operations manager to validate the order. So that's where we are right now. So now I'm going to go back to the operations manager, and I'm going to say orders to validate. And there it is. Now it's order number 36. So I'm going to make a note of 36 because this is the one we're going to walk through the whole process. Order number 36. I'm not yet at the QA checklist, so I'm not going to enter this. At this point, I'm going to validate the order. So I don't go down to orders to QA or closed orders or whatever. I'm going to validate orders. I edit the order. I decide I like what's on the order, and I go ahead and validate the order. And I update the order. An order has been successfully updated. So now if I go back into orders and refresh, it is now gone from the orders to validate window. All right. The next step after validation is it goes into the printing and engraving process. And so now I'm going to go and create another user for the printing and engraving process. We'll call him production. Okay. So I'm going to call him Pete. Pete production. Okay, and P production, did I spell that right? P production. Okay, and let's do this. And we need to make sure, remember to make him a production person. So P production is the guy. And we'll create that user add to the database. Let's go ahead and go back to the login. P production. Login. Change the password. Save new password. Log in. And we'll log in. All right. So now we are in the production. So the production guy's job is relatively simple because, again, his real job is out there building this thing out in the shop. So he's going to stop in here, once or twice a day or whatever and look at his orders. So anyway, he's going to look at order number 36. That is our order. These other ones are from various tests we ran, just so you know why we have these orders in here. And we can refresh, and then we can go ahead and review the order. All right, and we can see that this is this is the information that we want. All right, so at this point, he is going to go ahead and start building this. He's going to building this order. He's going to set this item as sold, and he's going to build the order. And at that point, it's going to move again. Now it's going to move over to QA. The operations manager will now need to perform his actual QA work. So I'm going to set it to sold and refresh. Now 36 is gone. Okay, so going back to our flowchart, printing, engraving, he does his work, and then it passes it to QA, which is in the purview of the operations manager. So we'll go back over to operations manager, and we'll look at orders to QA, and there's 36. So now, of course, we're assuming that the QA, the operations manager, is looking at the T-shirts themselves, and he sees that he checks the spelling, alignment, color scheme, and that it's free of defects. He has to check all of these before the Pass QA button is allowed. Once these are set, then he can choose Pass QA. Order Pass QA, order is now set to complete. So again, if we look at our flowchart, it said that once it's passed QA, then he sends it to as complete, and it goes to the stock room. So now we're going to create the stock room. Okay. And let's go ahead and create a user. And we're going to go ahead and have a Sally. Sally stock. Okay, that's stock. And we're going to make Sally shipping. Create that user. Go back to the login. Change password. Log in. Log in. And there's 36. Orders to process. So now we can see that there's inventory on hand here, right? So at this point also the shipping person, Sally, is in charge of managing the inventory. So we have 12 units on hand currently. So let's say that Sally said we need to go ahead and add 20 more. We're going to add 20 units, and we update inventory, and exit, and then we go ahead and go back, and now you see we have 32 items on hand. Okay. At that point, the shipping guy, of course, he packages it all up and he actually ships it, and then according to the flowchart, he sets the item as delivered, and that decrements the stock count. And so it'll be subtracted. So 5 will be subtracted from this once we hit the mark as delivered. So let me go ahead and mark this as delivered. And it says stock is decremented. Okay, and then if we go to orders process, it is now gone from the shipping view. Looking at the spreadsheet, that now it goes back to the salesperson to close it, to close the order out. So we're back to the salesperson, and we're looking at delivered orders, and there's 36. And so this is now set to closed orders. Oh, I'm sorry, I did it wrong. So I have 36, and now I need to edit that order. And I set it to order closed, update the order. And now it's still there. Hold on. Delivered orders. Order closed. Oh, I see. It's showing up in the closed orders as well. It did not get removed from the delivered items, but it is in the closed items. And then you go back to finish this up. We're almost done. Operations manager looks at closed orders and he sees 36, and he is now responsible for notifying the customer, a phone call to the customer that the item has been closed. So that is the end of the demonstration. I can go on and work on or go back to the presentation for a couple more slides, the key learnings, and then the conclusion, unless you had any questions on the application before I close out of it. All right, let's move on back to the presentation. Okay. So here's some of the lessons and some of the problems and some of the lessons that were learned. So this team is a coast-to-coast team. We've got someone on the West Coast, someone on the East Coast, someone in Florida, someone in Canada. I'm in Arizona. We've got this continent surrounded. So we are good. In addition to that, we also, of course, had a couple of the two who aren't here tonight. They have these work schedules. David Garrett specifically, this guy's got the worst work schedule. He works days 1 week, then he works a swing shift, and then he moves over to graveyards, and then he starts over again. On top of that, he had another senior project that he was working on. He's got 4 small kids. He's got his hands full, and so that was certainly a challenge. We had illnesses, we had various issues, and yet, I forgot to mention this at the front, but I have to say that this was the funnest project. It was the most productive and funnest project. We had no dramas, no falling outs, no fights. None of that thing. We had meetings, and we would have some long meetings. We had some 4-hour meetings, and they were all working session meetings. We would have ad hoc working session meetings. We couldn't really do a regular meeting once a week at a certain time because of all the schedule changes. So we had to play it by ear from week to week. But we would all get together on these meetings and just have a good time, and have some laughs, but still get a lot of work done. A really, really, really good team, especially considering that none of us are working developers. I think it's amazing. So my hats off to the team. The other issue we had was the iConnect. We started fighting with that iConnect, but I'll tell you, it's like this old guy down the block from me, Mr. Nickleby, used to always say, a bulldog can whip a skunk, but sometimes it ain't worth the effort. So that's kind of a funny country idiom, but meaning, is it really worth fighting iConnect issues? No. We went ahead and went with Skype, and we had no issues with connectivity. The other learning, more so than a problem, was we started off initially with Microsoft Access and Visual Basic, but we learned pretty quickly that it isn't, especially Microsoft Access, just not flexible enough for what we were doing. Also, not as much information. You go online to Google and you go on to these various forums. You're looking for help with coding and whatever logic and et cetera. I mean, it's a great resource, but there's not much information out there on, comparatively speaking, there's not much information on Access as there is on like MS SQL, and there's not as much on Visual Basic, it seems like, as there is on C Sharp. Although Visual Basic is close. That would have been okay to stay with Visual Basic, but we definitely had to get rid of MS Access. But probably the biggest reason is also that we're finding that there's just really no demand for, especially for Microsoft Access out in the industry. The demand is to be a SQL or an Oracle database administrator, and then C Sharp is more in demand, it seems like, than Visual Basic. So, but we learned that pretty quickly, and we went ahead and moved on. We made a decision and we rolled with it before we got too far down the rabbit hole. And then finally, as I've mentioned a couple times, is the skill set required to perform the significant code-based database manipulation was stretched to the limit. We definitely learned as we went on this one. So it was a challenge, but I'm pleased with how it turned out and how we all worked through it together. And then the conclusion is just that by thinking outside the box, while at the same time not trying to reinvent the wheel, we were able to provide a value add solution to our stakeholders, and we did that by fundamentally understanding our potential target users and what they needed, and not trying to go beyond that, not trying to build in a lot of extra whistles and bells or fancy things that are beyond the scope of the project. We wanted to keep it narrow focused. So I feel like that's what we did, and that is the conclusion of that. Does anybody have any comments, David or John? Or all right, okay, Professor, we are done. Do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions. I think I heard several times that none of you is a developer. Looking at what you developed, if none of you is a developer, then I don't know. Because it looks like whoever did it is a developer. Because
Yes,
it's very neat.
we're
It's
very,
very
very
neat,
proud.
very simple, and
Yes, we're very
very
proud of it.
neat.
We're all very, very proud.
Okay. Yeah. So you did well on that.
Good.
Are you going to? Did you register for the showcase? No. The
No,
senior project showdown? No.
no.
Okay, I think yeah. Okay, so each of you is supposed to complete the peer review form.
Yes.
It's just 10 points. It doesn't make a difference, but you need to just complete it. Okay, and make
Yep.
sure you upload all your files
Yes, everything
to
has
the
already
Dropbox.
been uploaded. Everything is uploaded into Dropbox already. I did it just before this meeting.
Okay, and I'll make sure I grade everything before Saturday also.
Yes. All we need is the time
Okay.
cards.
Any questions for me? Yeah,
No.
there's no time card for week 8. I mean, there's Dropbox, but it's not graded.
Oh. Oh, okay. I saw it in the